I am a 38-year-old single man with a demanding job. Truth be told, I sometimes feel overwhelmed by my work. It's not something I'm proud of, but occasionally, I crave solitude. My friends understand my need for space, so every few weeks, I leave my responsibilities behind and rent a cabin for a couple of nights. During this time, I disconnect from the world, indulge in some whiskey, and enjoy a few days of tranquility. It's unconventional, but it's my way of maintaining balance. This event occurred about a year ago. I had reserved a cabin in a secluded village in Montana. It was a 10-hour journey from my place and took me the whole day to reach the cabin. It was quite late, around midnight, when I finally arrived. All I wanted was to unload my stuff and sleep, but as soon as I stepped out of my car, an old man from the neighboring house started waving at me. He was standing in his barren yard, waving and calling out to me. I returned his gesture, trying to avoid getting drawn into a conversation. I kept my back to him as I unloaded my backpack, then made my way to the cabin. I could see him out of the corner of my eye, still standing there, observing me as I entered the cabin. I locked the door behind me, feeling a mix of confusion and fatigue, then brought my things to the bedroom. The cabin seemed tidy and well kept. I was too exhausted to explore. All I wanted was a warm shower and a good sleep. So, I quickly found the bathroom, took a long shower, and prepared myself for bed. As I was making the bed, I heard the doorbell ring. I was so worn out, I didn't bother to check. I ignored it and drifted off to sleep. The next day, I woke up feeling rejuvenated and ready to explore. I visited the village, took in the sights, and had dinner at a local eatery. It was a pleasant day. Around 8 p.m., I returned to the cabin. When I arrived, the man from the previous night was standing near the front door. As soon as he saw me, he hurried back to his house. It was odd. I didn't pay it much mind and walked into my cabin. My attention was on the TV, but my thoughts were on the man's strange behavior. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud against the window. It sounded like someone had intentionally hit the window with something solid. I looked towards the window. At first, I saw nothing, but upon closer inspection, I noticed a small figure standing there. It bent down, picked something up, and then hurled it right at the window I was looking out of. I recoiled in surprise, realizing it was probably that man. I opened the back door and yelled out, telling him to leave. I could barely make out his figure in the darkness. He wasn't moving, though. "Who's there? Get out of here!" I shouted at the top of my voice. Despite my outward bravado, I was genuinely unnerved. I quickly closed the curtain and tried to sleep. After what felt like forever, I heard a noise. I couldn't identify the sound because it was faint and brief. I turned on my phone and decided to call the police. But before I could do anything, someone burst open my bedroom door. My eyes widened in terror. I immediately jumped out of bed. Standing just a few feet away from me was that man, barefoot, in my hallway. His pitch-black eyes stared at me, and his grin was unnaturally wide. He looked deranged. "Leave now, or I'm calling the police." I tried to intimidate him, but the man didn't budge. Instead, he started laughing maniacally, never breaking eye contact. With no other choice, I ran to the bathroom and locked myself in while the man pounded on the door, demanding that I come out. Luckily, I managed to call 911, and they arrived at the cabin within 10 minutes. When the police searched the cabin, they found no one. They escorted me off the property for my safety. A few months later, a similar incident was reported in the news where a man diagnosed with schizophrenia had killed a pair at a rental cabin in Montana. I immediately contacted the police, and sure enough, it was the same man. This tale unfolded a year ago. I was weary of my repetitive work and craved a solitary weekend escape. Thus, I reserved a secluded cottage 4 hours from my city. The cottage was nestled amidst a forest, with a handful of other cottages within a mile radius. I was enamored by the location, particularly the forest that extended right up to the backyard. I was thrilled as it was precisely the kind of retreat I had envisioned. Upon my early morning arrival, I roamed around the property, capturing beautiful images of the blooming wildflowers. In the afternoon, I relaxed on the back patio in a rocking chair. As I gazed into the distance, I spotted a man strolling in the woods. From what I could discern, he seemed like an ordinary guy, and I assumed he was a fellow vacationer from one of the nearby cottages. However, he ventured deeper into the woods until he was out of sight. His presence didn't perturb me. I simply remained there, savoring the tranquility of nature and nibbling on snacks. Soon, it was past 8 p.m., so I decided to prepare pasta for dinner. I switched on the TV and started to enjoy my pasta bowl. During the movie, the doorbell rang. I was taken aback as I wasn't anticipating any visitors. Assuming it was the cottage owner, I went to answer the door. A man was standing on the porch, and I recognized him as the guy I'd seen earlier in the woods. "Hello? Are you searching for someone?" I inquired. The man grinned broadly and nodded. "You," he responded. Quite baffled, I stared at him, perplexed. "I have been lost for a few hours and needed help getting back to his cottage," he elaborated. I hesitated for a moment, sensing something odd about this man, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. "Wait a moment. I will fetch my phone and look up the address," I replied. The man remained silent as I closed the door and walked over to the couch, picked up my phone, and returned. But when I opened the door, he had vanished. He was nowhere to be seen on my porch or in the front yard. I stood in the doorway for a moment, then shut it and returned to the couch. I knew something was amiss about that man, but this just didn't add up. I stayed alert for a while, but eventually, I retired to bed. I slept surprisingly soundly, and in the morning I woke up and stepped out onto the back porch to sip my coffee. But just 10 minutes later, I witnessed something unexpected. That man from the previous day was sauntering in the woods in the same spot as before, seemingly following the same trail. One thing I was certain of now was that he definitely wasn't lost. But then why did he approach my cottage? I retreated indoors after witnessing that and dialed my brother to narrate the peculiar situation. Conversing with him reassured me and confirmed that I wasn't overanalyzing the situation. He was equally puzzled. As we were conversing, I heard a sound that nearly gave me a heart attack. The doorbell rang again. "I think there's someone at the door," I whispered to my brother, and left the call active while I answered the door. It was the same man. I abruptly demanded, "What do you want?" The man smiled and repeated his previous day's claim about being lost and needing assistance. I glared at him with a mix of annoyance and confusion. Then he spoke again. "Can you fetch your phone and look up the address?" My entire body froze. I slammed the door shut in his face and updated my brother, who insisted that I vacate the property immediately. I concurred and hastily packed my belongings. I peered through the peephole to ensure the man had departed before I headed out to my car. After tossing my bags in the back seat, I climbed in and began to reverse. As I did, I saw the man in the front window standing inside the cottage, watching me drive off. I sped home. My brother stayed on the phone throughout the drive and embraced me tightly when I arrived home. He contacted the Airbnb owner on my behalf since I was too shaken to even discuss the situation. However, the owner's response was a terse, "Okay." She didn't seem concerned at all. To this day, the incident sends shivers down my spine. As a painter, I often seek solitude in remote locations to create my art in tranquility. I usually prefer to be alone, and until this incident, I had never regretted it. Last autumn, I rented a cabin nestled in a dense forest. The scenery was breathtaking, and it was the most serene place I had ever been. There were no other cabins in sight. The cabin's owner, Samuel, greeted me warmly and handed over the keys, leaving his contact details in case I needed anything. The two-story cabin was ideal for a solo traveler like me. I chose to set up my studio in the loft because it overlooked a small creek. This was the perfect place to paint. The moonlight reflecting off the creek was mesmerizing. I was so engrossed in my work that I lost track of time. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the wooden stairs. I rushed downstairs, but there was no one there. "I'm the only one here," I reassured myself. After dinner, I turned off the lights and retired to bed. The moonlight streaming in from the window illuminated the room. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of my name being whispered. I heard the soft, deliberate footsteps of someone outside my bedroom door. My heart pounded in my chest. I sat there, listening to the rustling sounds outside. Then, it came right up to the door. There was a long moment of silence. I stepped out of the room and into the hallway. Suddenly, I noticed movement in the bathroom. It was quiet until a figure emerged from the doorway. "Hand over your money! Now!" It yelled at me, brandishing a kitchen knife. I did as I was told, pointing fearfully to my bag against the wall. My heart was racing. The man grabbed the bag and slung it over his shoulder, then ordered me to step into the hallway. As I backed away, I saw another man at the end of the hallway, eerily similar to the first. They both stared at me like predators ready to pounce. "Please, just let me go," I pleaded softly. The man in the hallway turned to look at something around the corner, and instinctively, I bolted for the front door. I ran out and sprinted down the road until I reached a convenience store, where I called the police. The men had vanished, but the police mentioned that such incidents were common in the area. Seeing the neighborhood in daylight, it was clear that it was not a safe area. I had never been there before, so I had no idea that I was staying in a dangerous place. I never thought a cabin rental would be in such an area. The most terrifying part was when I was fleeing. I swear, I heard more than just 2 sets of footsteps chasing after me.